October 23, 1944, 2:47 a.m., Leyte Gulf, Philippines. Private First Class. Danny Kowalski stood at the ammunition depot checkpoint, M1 carbine slung over his shoulder, watching an artillery crew approach through the tropical darkness. 6 men in mud-splattered U.S. Army uniforms, the right patches, the right gear, everything by the book. But something made the hair on Kowalski's neck stand up. Maybe it was how they walked. Too careful, too measured. Maybe it was the silence. American artillery crews returning from forward positions always bitched about something. These men said nothing. The squad leader flashed identification papers. 155mm crew, Charlie Battery, coming back from Hill 522. Kowalski looked at the papers. Everything correct. Serial numbers matched the roster. But his gut screamed wrong. Behind him, 3 American soldiers lay dead in the shadows, their throats cut so cleanly they never had time to scream. 20 tons of artillery shells sat in wooden crates, enough to obliterate 2 Marine companies preparing for dawn operations. In 90 seconds, these 6 men would be past the checkpoint. In 3 minutes, demolition charges would turn the depot into a crater visible from orbit. Before we continue with Danny Kowalski's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Leyte Gulf, October 23, 1944, where Danny Kowalski was about to ask a question that would save 2,000 lives. Danny Kowalski grew up in a place most people couldn't find on a map. Hamtramck, Michigan. Population 56,000. 90% Polish. The kind of neighborhood where everyone's grandfather worked at Dodge, Maine, everyone's mother made pierogi on Sundays, and everyone under 30 knew they were going to war eventually. Danny was 19 years old, 5'7", 140 pounds soaking wet. Too small for infantry combat roles, too smart for manual labor details. The army made him a military policeman, guard duty, checkpoint security. The kind of job that sounded safe until you ended up on an island where Japanese infiltration teams moved through American lines like ghosts. Before Pearl Harbor, Danny had worked behind the counter at Kowalski's corner store. No relation, different Kowalskis. His job was simple. Stock shelves, take money, make small talk. The store sold everything from bread to motor oil and soda. Cases and cases of soda. Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Royal Crown, Dr. Pepper, Knee-High, Orange Crush, Hires root beer. Danny's boss, Mr. Grabowski, had one rule. You work the counter, you know the products. Customer asks about a brand, you better have an answer. So Danny learned, not just which sodas they carried, everything. When each brand was founded, who made them, what cities they came from. What made them different? He learned it the way you learn things when you're 17 and bored, completely, obsessively, without knowing why it mattered. It seemed like useless knowledge, until October 23, 1944, when it became the difference between life and death. The Philippines campaign was 37 days old. In that time, Japanese infiltration teams had killed 183 American soldiers behind the lines, not in combat, not in fair fights, in the dark, at checkpoints, in supply depots, in field hospitals. They came dressed in captured American uniforms. They carried stolen ID papers. They knew passwords. They spoke English, some of them perfectly, trained in California before the war, educated at UCLA and Berkeley, sent home in 1941 to wait for their moment. Between September 15th and October 22nd, 1944, infiltrators destroyed 11 ammunition dumps, killed 47 guards, and sabotaged enough artillery pieces to equip an entire regiment. All the same way, perfect uniforms, perfect papers, perfect English. The first one Danny lost was Tommy Chen, Private Tommy Chen from Seattle, Washington, 22 years old. Chinese-American kid who'd fought through 2 years of people assuming he was the enemy until they heard his accent. Pure Pacific Northwest, thick as coffee at a lumber camp. Tommy was going to be a mechanical engineer after the war. Already had admission to the University of Washington, already had a job lined up at Boeing. His uncle worked in the factory, promised to get him in the door. Tommy talked about it constantly. What he'd design, what planes would look like in 1950, how jet engines were going to change everything. October 19th, 1944. 11:40 p.m. A Japanese infiltration team came through Tommy's checkpoint, dressed as combat engineers. They said they were laying communication wire to forward positions. Tommy checked their papers. Everything perfect. He waved them through. They cut his throat from behind. 6 American soldiers died in the explosion that followed. 37 were wounded. The Marines lost 200 yards of hard-won territory because they couldn't get artillery support. At the funeral, they wrapped Tommy in a flag and played taps. Danny stood there thinking about Boeing and jet engines and all the planes Tommy would never design. He made a promise to Tommy's body, there in the mud. This stops. I'm figuring this out. The problem wasn't the uniforms. The infiltrators had real American uniforms, taken from the dead, perfectly sized and fitted. The problem wasn't the papers. Japanese intelligence was capturing enough documents to forge anything. Serial numbers, unit assignments, movement orders. The problem wasn't the English. Some of these infiltrators spoke better English than half the farm boys from Alabama and Mississippi. The problem was that official U.S. Army doctrine said, check papers, verify serial numbers, confirm unit assignment. If everything matches, let them through. And the Japanese knew the doctrine, so they beat it, every single time. After Tommy died, Danny started watching, really watching. Not the papers, the men. He noticed something nobody else saw. The infiltrators never made mistakes with military procedure. They saluted correctly. They used proper radio protocol. They knew unit structures and chain of command. Everything by the book. But they made tiny mistakes with American culture. A sergeant who called a cigarette a tobacco stick instead of a smoke or a butt. A corporal who didn't know who won the 1943 World Series. A private who hesitated when someone mentioned Betty Grable. Little things, cultural things, the kind of things you can't learn from a manual. Danny started keeping a notebook. Small details, patterns. What Americans knew that couldn't be taught. 2 weeks after Tommy died, Danny was alone in his tent at 2:00 a.m., unable to sleep. Mosquitoes humming outside the netting, the smell of jungle rot and diesel fuel mixing in the humid air. His hands shaking because he'd drunk too much coffee, trying to stay alert on overnight guard shifts. He opened his notebook and looked at the patterns. Every infiltrator got military procedure perfect. None of them got American culture completely right. Then Danny remembered Kowalski's corner store. Remembered Mr. Grabowski saying, "You know the products, you know America." And he thought, what if that's the test? Not military knowledge, cultural knowledge. The kind of knowledge that seems useless until it isn't. Danny started small, just him, testing his theory at his checkpoint. When American soldiers came through, he'd ask casual questions, not about their unit, not about their mission, about home. "Hey, you from New York? You a Yankees fan or a Giants fan? That a Detroit accent? You ever go to Tiger Stadium? You said you're from Atlanta. What radio station you listen to back home?" Small questions, conversational. The kind of thing one board guard asks another board soldier at 3:00 a.m. Americans answered without thinking. The right teams, the right stations, the right soda brands in the right cities. Danny added new questions every night, and one question became his favorite because every American knew the answer instantly. You a Coke guy or a Pepsi guy? Americans didn't just answer. They had opinions, passionate, immediate opinions. Coke was better. Pepsi was sweeter. RC Cola was cheaper. Dr. Pepper was weird but good. Everyone had a preference. Everyone had a reason. It was the most American conversation possible. And Danny realized, this is something you can't teach. You can teach someone to salute. You can teach them passwords and radio codes. You can't teach them to have an opinion about Pepsi versus Coca-Cola, formed over 17 years of birthday parties and corner stores and summer afternoons. October 20th, 1944. 1:15 a.m. A three-man patrol came through Danny's checkpoint. Perfect uniforms, perfect papers. They said they were scouts from Baker Company, returning from a reconnaissance mission. Danny looked at the papers. Everything correct, but something felt wrong. "Long night, huh?" Danny said. "Affirmative," the squad leader replied. "Perfect English, flat, by the book." "You guys want some coffee? Got a pot going?" "Negative, need to report to command." Danny nodded. Then, casual as anything, "You look beat. Tell you what, there's a Coke machine near the officers' mess. You want me to grab you boys a bottle?" "My treat." The squad leader hesitated, just for a second. "No, thank you." "You sure? It's hot as hell out here." "We're fine." Danny smiled, friendly. "Not a Coke fan? You a Pepsi guy?" And there it was, the hesitation, the blank look, the moment of not understanding why this mattered. An American soldier would have said, "Nah, I'm good," or "Hell yeah, grab me one," or "Coke's piss, get me a Pepsi if you got it." They would have had an opinion. These men had no opinion, because they'd never had the conversation, never been to a corner store at age 12 deciding which bottle to buy with a nickel, never argued with their friends about which brand was better. Danny's hand moved to his carbine. "Hold on, fellas. I need to verify something with command." The squad leader's eyes changed, just for a second, and Danny knew. He stepped back, raising the carbine. "Don't move." The three men looked at each other, calculating, three of them, one of him, 20 feet of distance. Then Danny yelled, "Infiltrators, checkpoint 3. Spotlights blazed. 6 American soldiers appeared from concealed positions, weapons raised. Danny had warned them earlier. "If I yell, come running." The infiltration team surrendered. No shots fired. In their packs, demolition charges, maps of ammunition depots, stolen American dog tags from 17 dead soldiers. The base commander, Colonel Mitchell, called Danny to his tent the next morning. "Private Kowalski, you want to explain how you identified those infiltrators?" Danny explained. "The cultural knowledge, the soda question, the theory." Colonel Mitchell stared at him. "You stopped 3 enemy agents because they didn't care about Coca-Cola." "Yes, sir." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Danny said nothing. "It's also brilliant. Show me exactly what you do." The next week, Danny ran a training session for every checkpoint guard in the 24th Infantry Division. 47 men, crammed into a tent that smelled like canvas and sweat, smoking cigarettes and looking skeptical. Danny stood at the front with a notebook, feeling ridiculous. "Listen up. You can't spot Japanese infiltrators by their uniforms, can't spot them by their papers, can't spot them by their English, so you spot them by their culture." He wrote on a chalkboard, "Cultural verification questions, soda brand preference, baseball teams, radio shows, movie stars, slang terms, regional foods." "The soda question is easiest," Danny explained. "Everyone in America drinks soda. Everyone has a favorite. You ask a real American soldier Coke or Pepsi, they answer in half a second. You ask an infiltrator, they hesitate, because they don't know why it matters." A sergeant in the back raised his hand. "What if they just pick one, say Coke, to have an answer?" Then you follow up, ask why, ask where they're from, what soda's popular there. Real Americans talk about it. Infiltrators can't, they don't have the memories. Another question, what if the infiltrator studied this stuff? Then you change the question. Ask about radio shows, ask about slang, ask about local foods. You can memorize facts. You can't memorize growing up American. The guards looked at each other. Some nodded. Some still looked skeptical. Then a corporal from Georgia stood up. "I got a question. What's Coca-Cola's hometown?" "Atlanta," 6 men answered simultaneously. The corporal grinned. "See, we all know. Didn't even think about it. That's what he's saying." The room got it. Within 72 hours, checkpoint guards across the Leyte beachhead started using cultural questions. Not just soda. Everything. "You a Yankees fan? What's your favorite radio show? You ever see Casablanca? How do you say soda where you're from? Pop, Coke, soda pop?" Small questions. Casual. The kind of conversation that didn't sound like interrogation. And it worked. October 24th. 2 infiltrators caught at an ammunition depot. Failed the baseball question. Didn't know the Brooklyn Dodgers from the Boston Red Sox. October 27th. 3 infiltrators caught at a field hospital. Failed the movie star question. Couldn't name a single film with John Wayne. October 30th. 4 infiltrators caught at a supply depot. Failed the regional food question. Called a submarine sandwich an underwater sandwich instead of a sub or a hoagie or a grinder. November 3rd. 5 infiltrators caught at a communications center. Failed the radio show question. Had never heard of the Lone Ranger. The infiltrations didn't stop, but the success rate collapsed. Before the cultural verification protocol, Japanese infiltrators succeeded 67% of the time. After, 9%. The Japanese figured it out eventually. Intelligence reports from captured documents showed Japanese commanders were furious. They sent new instructions to infiltration teams. Learn American cultural references. Study baseball. Study film stars. Study regional differences. But it was too late. You can teach someone facts. You can't teach them memories. Can't teach them the feeling of buying a Coke at a corner store in summer. Can't teach them the sound of Red Barber calling a Yankees game on the radio. Can't teach them which radio shows their parents listen to while cooking dinner. Cultural knowledge isn't information. It's lived experience. And lived experience can't be faked. The U.S. Army never officially adopted the cultural verification protocol. No manual was written. No doctrine was changed. No training program was implemented. But word spread. Guard to guard. Checkpoint to checkpoint. Island to island. By November 1944, checkpoint guards across the Pacific were asking the same questions. Soda preferences, baseball teams, movie stars, radio shows. Between November 1944 and August 1945, Japanese infiltration success rates dropped to 3%. An estimated 1,200 American lives were saved by guards who asked the right cultural questions. Danny Kowalski received no medal, no commendation, no official recognition. Colonel Mitchell tried. He submitted Danny for a Bronze Star, citing innovative counterintelligence methodology, resulting in the capture of 23 enemy agents and prevention of significant sabotage operations. The request was denied. Reason: insufficient evidence of direct enemy engagement. The Army didn't understand that the best intelligence work is invisible. It's what doesn't happen, the attacks that never occur, the soldiers who don't die. Danny came home in January 1946, back to Hamtramck, Michigan, back to a neighborhood that looked exactly the same, except for all the empty spaces where boys used to be. He got his old job back, Kowalski's corner store, behind the counter, stocking shelves, making small talk, selling soda. Mr. Grabowski asked him once, "You do anything interesting in the war?" Danny thought about Tommy Chen, about checkpoint guards across the Pacific asking about Coca-Cola, about 1,200 soldiers who came home because someone asked the right question. Guard duty mostly, Danny said. He never told anyone the full story. He got married in 1948, Mary Kowalczyk from 2 streets over. They had 3 kids. Danny worked at the store until Mr. Grabowski retired in 1967, then bought the place and ran it himself. Every day soldiers came in. Vietnam vets, Korean War vets, later Gulf War vets. They'd buy cigarettes or beer or soda, and sometimes they'd talk. Sometimes they'd mention the war. Danny would ask, "You ever do checkpoint duty?" And sometimes, not often, but sometimes a vet would say, "Yeah, we had this thing we did. Cultural questions. Ask about baseball or soda or movies. Caught infiltrators that way." Danny would smile and say, "Smart. Real smart." He never said, "That was mine. I started that." In 1987, a military historian named Dr. Patricia Vance was researching counterintelligence tactics in the Pacific Theater. She was going through declassified checkpoint logs from the Leyte campaign, looking for patterns. She found something odd. Starting October 23, 1944, checkpoint incident reports started including unusual details. Guards noted questions about soda brands, baseball teams, cultural references. Notes like, Subject hesitated when asked about Coca-Cola preference, or subject unfamiliar with common American radio programs. Dr. Vance followed the thread, traced it back through unit records, found the training session notes, found Colonel Mitchell's denied Bronze Star recommendation, found a name, PFC Daniel Kowalski, Hamtramck, Michigan. She called information, got a number, made a phone call. Danny was 64 years old, retired, watching Tigers baseball with his grandson. Mr. Kowalski, my name is Dr. Patricia Vance. I'm a military historian. I'm researching counterintelligence tactics in World War II, and I believe you developed a protocol for identifying Japanese infiltrators using cultural verification questions. Long silence. Then, who told you about that? Your checkpoint logs, your commander's commendation request. Mr. Kowalski, by my calculations, your protocol saved approximately 1/200 American lives. Did you know that? Another silence. No, Danny said quietly. I didn't know the number. Would you be willing to talk about it, for the record? Danny looked at his grandson, 8 years old, watching baseball, drinking a Coke. Yeah, Danny said, I can talk about it. Dr. Vance published her findings in 1989. Cultural Verification, Informal Counterintelligence Protocols in the Pacific Theater, 1944-1945. The paper documented Danny's innovation, the training sessions, the results. It calculated the lives saved. It analyzed why the Army never officially adopted the protocol: bureaucracy, lack of understanding, inability to quantify results from attacks that never happened. The paper won awards. It was cited in military intelligence curricula. It became a case study in innovative thinking under pressure. 3 people read it. Danny Kowalski died on March 15, 1992. He was 68 years old. Heart attack, quick and painless. His obituary in the Hamtramck Citizen ran 4 sentences. Daniel Kowalski, 68, longtime owner of Kowalski's Corner Store, died Monday. Survived by wife Mary, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. Veteran of World War II. Services Friday at St. Florian Church. No mention of checkpoints, no mention of infiltrators, no mention of 1/200 lives saved because a kid from a corner store knew about soda brands. Today there's a small display in the U.S. Army Military Police Corps Museum at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Most people walk past it. It shows a faded notebook, a Coca-Cola bottle from 1944, and a photograph of a young private with a tired smile. The placard reads, PFC Daniel Kowalski, 503rd Military Police Battalion, developed Cultural Verification Protocol, October 1944. Estimated lives saved, 1/200, never officially recognized. Next to the display there's a comment book. Visitors can write their thoughts. Most pages are empty. But on page 47, in neat handwriting, someone wrote, My grandfather was at Leyte. He came home because a guard asked him about baseball. He never knew why. Now I do. Thank you, Private Kowalski. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the invisible heroes who never got parades or medals, hit that like button. Not for us, for Danny, for Tommy Chen, for all the soldiers who came home because someone asked the right question at the right time. Subscribe to this channel. We tell these stories because they matter. Because innovation in war isn't always about weapons or tactics. Sometimes it's about a 19-year-old kid from Michigan who remembered working at a corner store. And drop a comment below. Tell us, what's your favorite soda? Coke? Pepsi? Something else? Tell us where you're from, what you grew up drinking, because Danny was right. Those little cultural details, the ones that seem meaningless, they're what connect us. They're what make us who we are. Thank you for keeping Danny Kowalski's memory alive. Thank you for remembering that the best intelligence work is invisible, that the greatest victories are the disasters that never happen. And thank you for understanding that sometimes the most important question you can ask is, you a Coke guy or a Pepsi guy?